Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Girl Got Goals podcast, real talk from two women just trying to make it all work. Today, Kimberly and I are diving into the subject of perfectionism. We were talking to Jessica Crowley last week, and we all kind of decided, the three of us, Kimberly, Jessica, and myself, that we're perfectionists, and that was where a lot of our, I would say, issues in life kind of come from. And so I was thinking about that episode and I was like, you know what, Kimberly, next week we need to touch on perfectionism because it is a glaring character flaw in my life. I know that's held me back on many occasions. And so I just think it would be good to kind of dive into this topic. And when I started researching for this episode, I was like, okay, first things first, what is a perfectionist? So Kimberly, can you go over for us just the definition of a perfectionist so we can all kind of get an understanding of what we're going to be talking about today?
Yes. So the definition is a personality trait that is characterized by a tendency to set extremely high, rigid, or flawless goals and place excessive demands on oneself and others.
So when I listen to that definition, that immediately brings to my mind the enemy of growth. Like everything you just listed, rigid, it, to me, growth itself has to be flexible. Our mindsets have to be flexible. Our perspectives have to be flexible. Hell, life, has to be flexible. And if you don't bend, you're going to break. I think of trees in a hurricane, those that are more flexible and are able to bend with the wind, they kind of just snap back as if nothing ever happened. But if they're more rigid, they're going to break. So I think perfectionism probably isn't going to serve anyone well in the long term. So I really think we need to and when I say we, all of us need to kind of just be self-aware and kind of take an assessment of, are we a perfectionist or do we have perfectionist traits in our lives that are not serving us well? And so we're going to go over today the traits of a perfectionist, and we're going to go over some of the root causes of perfectionism. And then this is going to be a 2-part series. Next week, we're going to talk about progress over perfection, how to fix perfectionism or work towards, being more flexible.
Yeah. I feel like, and I don't know because it's still a work, but I feel like you're saying, it would almost just be, you can work towards it and you can change, but I don't know if that's one of those traits that is something you're constantly going to be working on. So for me, I would almost say, sometimes when we want to change something, we get upset with ourselves, but that is a characteristic, a trait that you were born with most of the time, or a trauma that happened to you. So I don't think that's something, I think it's something you have to work towards continuously, sometimes forever. Does that make sense? You hear about people that have alcoholism and they quit drinking or smoking. Like my husband, he's quit smoking maybe 6 years now. And occasionally I'll say, would you still want one? He said, oh, I could smoke one the size of this house right now. Like that is something he will always want. He has to choose every day to not do that. Same way when they still have, meetings for alcoholics. It's a lifestyle now. You've chosen not to do it. And for me, I feel like that this would be something for me. I cannot ever see a day that I would not have a trait of that I can work towards. And I have been working towards, and I feel like I've gotten better about that. But it's probably something that I will fight always.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like they say, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. That's part of the program, that you always identify as that. However, you are not actively drinking. And so I definitely see exactly what you're saying, in that a lot of times it is born and bred into you at a very young age. And so it is just part of who you are, although you make steps just like any other habits good habits you build, you have to let go of the bad habits and something that's no longer serving you. And you have to build new habits, and you have to kind of build a new identity, although that little voice in your head may never completely be silenced. I totally get that.
Yeah. Now, let me throw this out too, real quick. I'm not saying, or do I feel that being a perfectionist is a totally bad thing. I think sometimes that's what drives people. That's what helps you achieve things. So it's not an all bad thing, but when it would eat me up inside, because sometimes I think, habilitates you to be able to move forward. Like, I can't cook unless everything in the kitchen's perfect. I can't come in here and podcast till everything in the house is perfect. No, that's just stupid. That's being over obsessive with it. So there's a happy balance. And so I feel like I just wanted people to understand, I'm not saying that's a bad trait. This is for people that over obsess over it, and that it becomes something that, because it can affect your relationships. It can affect your life. That's what this is about. Correct.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I mean, even though you may not be a full blown perfectionist, you could have perfectionist traits, and that's something we're going to talk about. Everything's not black and white. Everything's not all or nothing. And so you may not be a perfectionist per se, if you're listening to this, but you may have a few of the traits that resonate with you that is causing you to be off balance in your life. And I mean, the more that you can be flexible and well-rounded and balanced and growing, just the better human you're going to be in general. And like you said, have better relationship with yourself, better relationship with others. And I think that just serves everyone well. So I think everybody has something to learn from today's episode.
Of course.
That's a great point. So what are the traits of perfectionism? So the first one I have listed is high standards. Like you said, perfectionists have high expectations of themselves and others. They may be ambitious and driven, but it's almost like they're holding themselves to the perfect ideal that almost is like never reached. So you find yourself being driven to an unrealistic standard, I would say. And so if you're never able to accomplish it, then you never stop. And I think celebrate your success. I think that could be one trait of a perfectionist, high standards. What do you think?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I feel sometimes, I know in my life there were things that I wouldn't even attempt to do, because if I didn't think that I could be great at it or perfect at it, I just chose not to do it, because, and I've said this to y'all before, because then that means I didn't fail, because to a perfectionist, failure is not an option. So if I don't try it, I can't fail.
And that was absolutely the very next thing I had on my list, fear of failure. Perfectionists may be terrified of failure and view mistakes as incompetence. So, yeah. I mean, that just led perfectly into, you have this unrealistic expectation. You set such a high standard that it completely terrifies the shit out of you. And so you just don't even start, which leads into another one, that's procrastination. They may delay their work and avoid the negative emotions associated with making mistakes. So it paralyzes you.
Yeah.
And I think you shared with us before your stories of, starting on your fitness journey. And sometimes you would just not even start things because you were paralyzed with fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because for me, it was I'm not sure. Well, that's a lie. I think as I've gotten older, I do know where some of it comes from, where some of it was triggered in my childhood. Fear of failing meant I was going to disappoint somebody. And I had told my husband that I wanted to win my pro card. Like once I got started, because to begin with, I didn't even know what a pro card was. But once I started going for it, it was like this. I almost had the drive of not stopping because this is not even going to make sense. Because yes, I wanted it. But do you know I wanted it so that he would be proud of me just as much or probably more than I wanted it for myself. It was like I wanted him to be able to say, my wife did this. And he would say, I want you to do it for yourself. And I understood that, but I still couldn't help the drive of not wanting to embarrass him by failing.
Yeah.
And I know saying that sounds dumb when it comes out of my mouth, but in my deepest, darkest moments, that's how I felt.
I don't think it sounds dumb at all. I think it sounds completely logical given your upbringing, and knowing your past and your situation. And I think it's tied into my next point. You're like the typical perfectionist. Oh my God, you're leading right into my points. Low self-esteem. Perfectionists may feel inadequate, leading to feelings of anxiety and poor self-esteem. Their self-esteem is likely dependent upon their success. Mm-hmm. I feel like you grew up needing to prove yourself, always needing to work harder than everyone else to gain that love, that acceptance, that recognition. And when that's in your formative years, you don't just get rid of that. That is who you are. That is your identity, that is solidified through the years. And as we grow up, even into our 20s and 30s, we're just living life. We're just, I wouldn't say existing, because it's more than just existing, but we're just kind of going through the motions of what we grew up with. I don't think it's until we get into midlife. For me, it was around 35, 37-ish. When you start, those narratives kind of start breaking down. Life throws so much shit at you to either you bend or you break, And I think that as we go through things, and I mean, on your 7-year journey to your pro card, you've been through a lot that was able to offer you up lessons about why am I doing this? I mean, you had to dig deep into why do I want this? Why am I doing this? You don't just submit yourself on stage for criticism and viewing half naked to the eye of a judge, on a national stage without some self-examination.
Yeah.
And
when somebody told me one time that I must have a lot of self-confidence to be able to do that, I couldn't even, I was like, oh, and they'll be like, I could never. I don't think what they understood was my why. I got to the point. See, I don't know how to explain it, but I, had somebody tell me one time, oh, I have the lowest self-esteem of anybody. Nobody has as lowest self-esteem as me. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, that's a bold statement. Number one. Number two, I was so low, I feel, on myself and in my life. This is going to sound probably weird to some people, and some people can resonate. It's almost when you hit the bottom, you hear about people's success stories a lot of time. It's when they hit rock bottom.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When I hit rock bottom in my self-esteem and who I was, and I was tired of it, is when I went for this. It was like, how can I constantly want to be positive to my kids? How can I constantly tell them to go for what they want, to strive for things, to be this, to be that, because I wanted them to not have the insecurities that I did, but yet I was still living in my insecurities. I'm not living what I'm telling them.
Do you remember that moment? Can you tell us about that? Was there a pivotal moment that you just had that epiphany? Like, this isn't working for me anymore. I got to do something different.
Well, I told you it kind of started with me just wanting to work out, with me turning 40 and not wanting to look the way I look. That was just probably general feminine in general. And then when I started the gym, there were people there that competed. And I was telling Carrie this morning, this is weird also, but it was like it just hit me this morning. I always hated my body. Always. Never felt good enough in general. And I would overachieve with everything. I'm kind of going back a little bit, but a lady at work the other day was like, no, I never did that. But if my mama gave me a list while she was at work of cleaning the house, and it could be 1, 2, 3. Well, I was going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Like, I was going to clean the whole house. I was that kid that the whole time I'm cleaning, I'm talking about like at probably 11, 12 years old, I'm getting out cleaning stuff and cleaning the sink with toothbrushes and getting scum. Like, I wanted it to be perfect, like sparkling, like my mom was going to walk in and praise me. Did it happen? No.
That was
So
my
then
next question. Did it ever happen? Did you ever get that love and acceptance? And
And I don't
girl.
think that she meant anything by it. She's just tired from coming home, being a mother, working all day. Yeah, I did what she asked me to do. But did she come over there and praise me because I went above and beyond? No. She probably didn't think too much of it. Did she think it was sweet? Maybe. But
Probably just expected it at that point because it's probably just what you did. Kimberly's going to do this for me, and that's just who you were. Yeah. But that just feeds into your compulsion to need to do more.
Right. Yeah. And she did, I'm not blaming her. I know she didn't know what was going on. But then it made me feel not perfect enough, not good enough. I always felt compared to my brother. I was never him. I was never good enough. He was my grandparents' favorite. What's wrong with me? Why don't people love me? And I did what I was telling him this morning. I said, I did a beauty pageant once and I really liked the girly things. I really liked that. And I was nervous about it. And of course I didn't win. And then and that's dumb because not everybody can win. But in my little pea brain then it was, you're not pretty. What's wrong with you? And it just led down this spiral. So once I started the gym and changing my body, and like I said, I would see other people do it. And this is the most horriblest thing in the whole wide world. But there was a lady in the gym and she was posing and she was getting ready for a show. And I remember, y'all don't hate me, but I remember looking at her and thinking, if she can do this, I can do this. Because I didn't think she looked any better than me. And so I was just like, I got to do this. And I told y'all, I just picked a show. I just jumped. Like, you need a 12-week diet. Here it is. I didn't want to tell nobody. That way, if I failed, I wasn't putting it on Facebook. Fear of failure.
Yeah, because before you probably had been procrastinating and not starting, like you said. So this time you're just like, I'm going to choose courage over fear. And I'm just going to do it and see what happens.
And then it comes to the point that once I do something like that, then there's no acceptance for failure. You're going to do what you got to do
or die.
Win. Yeah, because then the other bad trait I have in a way is competitiveness. Like, I am over the top competitive. So you mix them two together.
That's a deadly combination.
It's very deadly. But I told you a little bit after our podcast last week when we were speaking, that I think even my coach was a little surprised because this was the first time that I had used him. He had, corrected my posing because when I'm at home, I don't like myself. I'm not looking the way I look. You know that. I'm texting you. I'm sending you pictures. I'm just perfectionist. I'm not looking good. What am I doing? Just everything's going through my head. But the day of show, it's like a light bulb switches. The competitive Kim comes out, and it's like, I'm going to go up here whether I look good or not, and I want to win. It's like, I can't explain that twist in
Well, the
my
only
brain.
difference is your perspective and your mindset. You know, your need to win overrides the self criticism
Yeah.
and the
Well,
self
it's that
doubt.
also the don't fail, because it was in the
Right.
back of my head. Like, for instance, not last year, year before last, when I went and did the 2 national shows back to back and got second call outs. First time I'd ever got second call outs. Humbling, but embarrassing.
And you
Because,
never wanted to feel that way again, I'm sure.
no, but what I was more embarrassed of is that my husband had to go to work and tell everybody I got second call outs because everybody was asking him how I did. And then he has to just play it down and say, oh, she didn't do as good as she wants. And we all know that's just a cop out comment. Oh, that was embarrassing for me, for him.
What about for
Why?
you when you had to go to work and tell everybody when everybody was asking at the gym, because everybody knows you're getting ready
Yeah.
for a show,
Yeah.
then everybody's going to come for you and
Of
ask you.
course. It was embarrassing for me to you, but I tried not to feel that way because that's wrong in a way. I feel that way just because of this weird, twisted personality. And I know, because then you come back the next year and you win. I know it's just the way that sometimes it falls. It was your diet, or it wasn't necessarily me in general. Could have been the diet, could have been the way the other girls come in. I came in, leaner. They came in more full. What they want that year was more full. It had nothing to necessarily do with me,
Yeah.
but it takes a lot to understand that and make myself believe that. But at the same time, in this sport, when we tell other people, oh, well, they don't understand that. So it looks like you're making excuses, almost like in softball when you say, oh, well, the girls would have won, but the umpire made a bad call. So it's the umpire's fault,
Right, right. You're
So you feel,
projecting onto something
yeah,
else. Yeah.
yeah. And that's how you feel when you're talking to anybody that's not in the sport.
Yeah. And because failure for us isn't necessarily failure, it should be feedback. We get feedback from the judges, and, they tell us, every year we're just trying to beat our last year's physique. We're not really necessarily in competition with other people on the stage, which is bullshit because we really are.
Yeah.
But, we're all trying to win, but there's only so many spots at the top, but it should be feedback. You take that feedback, you get better, you come back next year better and stronger. But perfectionists are big on self-criticism, and they may be very hard on themselves and have difficulty accepting their imperfections. And so when you're submitting yourself into a sport, such as bodybuilding, you are being judged on the most personal thing you can be judged on, your body.
Mm-hmm. It's like, why in the world did I pick something when I have such low self-esteem of my body that I picked something to get myself out of this? But that could be why.
It is, yes. Yeah.
I mean, like for you have some of the same insecurities. Why did you pick
100%.
this?
Yeah. And
Because it
fitness,
pushes you to get past the insecurity that you have.
exactly. It's almost like they talk about what's the name of that therapy? It's like flooding. They have a technique in therapy called flooding, where they just flood you with your fear until it kind of desensitizes you. And I think that for us, fitness has kind of led us into this journey. The universe always gives you what you need, and it's going to continue to give you the lesson over and over and over again. You can choose to learn it, or you can choose to stay in the pattern. And I think, bodybuilding for us has pushed us into uncomfortable situations to where we either have to adapt or die. It's either you die into your same old self every day and you just kind of live out this meager existence, or you adapt and you learn how to become comfortable with being uncomfortable and you grow. And I think that's where, perfectionist traits have to go to die, that you have to just learn. First of all, you have to become aware. They tell you, like we talk about AA. I think there should be an AA group for every freaking issue. I really do, because I watched my sister go through the program and I watched her become a completely different person. And at the same time in her life as where she was going through drug and alcohol addiction and going through rehab, I was going through anxiety, panic attacks, insomnia, and all my personal issues, but there was no freaking AA group for me. It's like I had to deal with my shit on my own, and I almost wish there was an AA group for me. And I almost forgot where I was going with that. But no, in the program, they say the first step, in fixing your problem is admitting you having one. So you have to admit to yourself the issues, but it can't stop there. There's a lot of people that'll tell you their issues. Well, I'm just like this, or I'm just like that. And yes, you need to be aware of them. Yes, you need to identify them. Yes, you need to verbalize them, write them down, whatever you have to do, but you can't stop there. Mm-hmm. You have to push forward. And I've heard this several times lately, everything you want is on the other side of what you fear.
Yeah.
Because that fear to me is like a signaling of like, hey, something's off here.
Yeah. Well, just think, because there was a part of me that was like, I'm almost done with this. When I got stuck in call outs, I wasn't even going to compete last year. You know that. I was going to take time off, which this new coach is the one that talked me into doing the show last year. But there was that part of me that was like, what if I would have stopped? What if I would have let that fear of going on and embarrassment say, I'm not doing this again? But the weird part is there's also that part of the perfectionist that was like, you can't go out like this. Now, if you go out coming third or second, that's one thing. But to go out feeling like you lost, so far down, even though I had gotten third place before, I had gotten fourth place before, I'd been in first call outs, 3 other times that I had done it. This was the only time, but that was the last time. I felt like that was going to be what would be in everybody's head, because they're going to forget what you did the first few times. They're going to remember the last. And that part of not failing, you can't go out like this. You can't, you got to pick yourself back up and redeem yourself. That was playing in my head too, which sounds really dumb, because at the same time you're putting yourself back out there. But it's that fear of failure, the fear of not accomplishing what I said I was going to accomplish. People's going to talk about me. Mm-hmm. And then I would be in my head also, sometimes in the gym, in the bathroom, when I'm tired and I'd go in there to use the bathroom and I'm playing this in my head, I'm like, nobody even cares. You think if I never competed again, who on my Facebook page is going to say, I don't think I've seen Kimberly compete this year. They don't give a two hoots what I did this year,
Mm-hmm. But build it up in our minds.
Yeah, in my mind, everybody's going to be thinking I'm a failure. All of the people that have competed with me before, all of my past coaches are going to know I didn't make it. They're going to say, oh, you quit. So I was obsessed with what everybody else thinks of me.
Yeah. And the last trait that we have is defensiveness. And I think this is something that I really struggled with until I got a handle on my shit. Is perfectionists may be defensive when criticized, taking it as a statement of their worth. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that you did really struggle with. Maybe not that you got defensive after, having such a poor placing at that show, but to yourself you did. You took it as a statement of your worth, and it kind of crumbled you a little bit on the inside. But I think it was a necessary crumbling. Yeah. And I think like we talked about, life gives you these things to where you're almost like the waves are coming and you keep bashing up against the same rock, and and you have the option to like change course,
Mhm.
or
Right.
rebirth into something new. I mean, there's what our listeners may be going through now, and this is the point I'm trying to make, is you may think that life's just beating the shit out of you right now, but it's trying to make you into something better. It's trying to help you learn this lesson and grow. So now every time life gets hard for me, when I get into those situations, I'm like, okay, what are you trying to teach me? What's the lesson I need to learn from this? I'm ready to hurry up and fail and learn this lesson so I can move past, and
Yeah.
reap the rewards of what's on the other side.
I would say I have that trait, which is really weird. Just in general in life, not just us talking about competing, but, at work or anything. I always, this is terrible, but my dad and my brother both would always tell me, you're so sensitive. You take everything so personal. Like they cannot give me constructive criticism or try to, as they say, correct me because I take it personal.
Yeah,
Because when you tell me that, I take it that I'm not good enough.
right.
I'm not doing what you think I should do. I'm not as good as you. And yes, that stems from my childhood
Mm-hmm.
of other people making me feel that way. So
Mm-hmm.
now that goes over into everything I do. And that's another thing I was telling somebody the other day that I've been really working on is trying to take what people say and not take it personal to grow. That doesn't mean it's towards me, but it's a work in progress. I feel like
Yeah,
I'm getting better, but occasionally things will rear from childhood.
yeah. And I was trying to think of the name of the book I read this one time. Trying to look it up on my phone, but essentially, it was a book that was given to me, and it was about criticism. And I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was saying that all the criticism you receive is a gift. So even if somebody has ill intentions towards you and they're not necessarily trying to give you feedback for your betterment, they could be, or they could just be trying to tear you down. There is some truth to everything that someone says, and you can kind of take that statement that's given to you and you can kind of mine the little nuggets of gold out of it and take what serves you and then release the rest. You can choose, and not you as in Kimberly, but people, we can choose to hear feedback, take what serves us to make us better, and not necessarily make it about who we are as a
Mm-hmm.
person, and then, release it. It's easier said than done, for sure. But I had never heard that perspective before reading that book. I took everything very seriously because, like you know, my actions, I was a high achiever, and my actions were to gain the attention and the acceptance of those around me. And if you gave me any feedback, I took it as criticism, and it hurt me to the core. And I know
Mm-hmm.
people in my life today who just cannot hear criticism. They get so defensive, and then it just shuts down all conversation. It shuts down any growth mindset. Like, it almost locks you into that black or white thinking, that all or nothing that serves nobody well. And
Well,
you can't even grow from that because you end up getting so upset and hurt by it.
well, I feel we can look at this because also this was something I told somebody the other day that I know that I don't take criticism well. And I know, like I said, that that's just a trigger from my past to make me feel like that I'm not good enough. But it depends on what it is that sometimes we need to. I'm learning to be better about self checking myself because if we get defensive about something, It's one or two things. One, we're defensive because sometimes people say stuff that's just so far off that it ticks me off because I'm like, you are so wrong with what you said. That ain't even me. That's not even true. That's something different. But if it triggers you, 90% of the time it's because you know it's true.
Yeah, there's a
You
reason.
know,
Even if it's not true, it's like what inside of me is so hurt that I'm letting that person get to me. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
But
Like
we can look at this with not just work and relationships because perfectionism can affect our relationships with friends, spouses, because
children.
I expect, yes, you expect them to do everything perfect. Or if I'm up doing this and this and the house has to be perfect. My kids used to send me this video on Facebook all the time that every time it would come around, and I don't remember who it was, but it was like a man dressed up like a woman and he's cleaning the house. Oh, we got people coming over. We got to act like nobody lives here. And
My
he's
kids sent me the
vacuuming.
exact same video. I knew exactly what you were talking about when you said that.
And that's the way I would be. It's like I want somebody to come in my house and everything have a place, everything be perfect. Like we don't even freaking live here. And
Right.
if it's not like that, I obsess over it. And then I start thinking, there's only one me. I can't get it all done. And then I get anxiety about it. Then I start thinking, why am I feeling this way? Let it go. Then I'll get mad because I let it go. And I'm like, you would normally never do this. Or somebody would say, been happening in the past year. I didn't do something I would normally do. And they were like, I can't believe you did that. Then I was like, oh God, I failed. They expect this of me. I got to keep this up, and it's like, I am so exhausted from keeping up everything. And when I say that, it's like all of the decorating for Christmas. I mean, I put up like 10 trees, and if I decide one year not to do, like I decided this year not to do my kitchen because my grandkids were only going to be here for one day because they don't live down here anymore. And then when my daughter comes to town, she's like, oh, I can't believe you didn't decorate the kitchen. Now I'm upset, because then I seen how much it meant to her. But I was just tired and thinking, well, that's a lot of work for me to do for y'all to be here one day. They're not going to care. And then when they did care, then I feel like I disappointed them. So,
Yeah.
mind you, it will be done every year from now on.
Oh Lord.
But it's like when I feel like I've let somebody down, that bothers me. But anyway, my whole point was it's affecting you for some reason. You're feeling a certain way if you have a talk with your spouse and he says, well, you do this and it bothers me. And then you take it so personal and you can't discuss.
Move past it. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you're expecting him to do everything you do because you do it. Then that could be a problem. I have noticed that in myself. I expect everybody to be going 24/7, and that's just unrealistic. And it's not fair to put those expectations on them just because that's what I want.
I would say it's not fair to put those expectations on yourself because nobody can go 24/7.
Well, this is probably true. I'm trying, Marci.
I'm just saying you have those high expectations set for yourself. And we do turn around and expect that from other people because that is what was expected of us, we thought, and what we expected from ourselves. But, I'm on the other side of perfectionism now. I think I'm just a few years ahead of you in my journey because I let go of it and I'm continuing to learn how to let go of it. And now I'm on the other side to where I look back and my biggest regret in life is expecting that from my children. I put those expectations on myself and I thought that being a good parent was to have those high expectations set for my children because I thought that if they achieved success, then they were successful people, then that meant I was a successful parent. And that is not at all what life is about. They need to be good humans and they need to be seen and they need to be heard and they need to be loved and they need to be validated and they need to find their self-worth and their beauty in life and in living life and in who they are as people. And you need to find that in yourself too. And it's just, I'm looking on the other side now. I was not that parent with my first two children. I kind of had my great awakening or my midlife crisis or whatever the hell you want to call it, when my third child was smaller. So I'm a much different parent with her. And her personality is much different than the other two. And I don't know if some of that is because she genetically is different or if it had a lot to do with how I parented her. It's probably some of both,
Yeah. My girls always say that I was harder on them than I am my son because, I made them clean and do this and do their own laundry. That boy don't do his own laundry. And the few times he has, I got to say something to him. He puts too much stuff in there. I'm like, good.
That's all men do.
You're going to tear up the wash machine.
Separate your freaking colors, man. You cannot throw everything into one load.
Oh, now my husband separates colors. He's such a good washer. Shout out.
I thought you were supposed to say he's such a good wife.
That too. No, he did all the laundry for me yesterday so that we could go to the gym today and I didn't have to worry about it.
Go, Carrie. Go, Carrie.
If he's home, I know. When he's home on Saturdays and not at the hunting camp, he does do laundry for me. He has gotten in the past several years, because I work on Saturdays, that he does that. So Sunday we can somewhat be together and I'm not having to do that, especially when I'm working 6 days a week like I am right now. Now, if I'm off on Friday, I will go ahead and start the laundry. And then by Saturday, he might be finishing up or I might have gotten it done, just depending on what my Friday was. But right now, I've been working 6 days a week. So, and side note, you was talking about the kids, and I thought this was hilarious. So I was hard on the girls. I made them clean and cook, and I thought I was teaching them responsibilities.
Life skills,
yeah. And so I told them they did, I didn't allow them to have a job because they played sports and there wasn't time for it. Now, some people would be like, they need a job. No, there's not time. I mean, we played travel ball during the summer, so they couldn't even have summer jobs. We were, practicing during the week. They were having tournaments on the weekends. When they were in school, they played volleyball, they played softball. I mean, it's a full-time thing. So as long as you kept your grades up and you were excelling in sports, you're not able to work.
So that was your job. Yeah,
exactly. And they both went to college on scholarships. So that was what they wanted. And so that was our focus.
Yeah.
And
paycheck, getting a college scholarship for all their hard work, period. Yeah.
Correct. So I was like, when you do chores, though, they would sometimes just halfway do it. And I'm like, no. So my stickler is we have a refrigerator in the pantry. I do get upset when my husband doesn't do this. But when you put the drinks in there, then we bought Cokes because we all drink Cokes. We don't no more. It's Waters and his Monsters and protein shakes. But the labels are faced out. You line them up, labels faced out.
Oh God.
Five in a row. And they would just throw them in there. And if I seen them throw them in there and they weren't correct, I'd make them fix it. And I can remember my daughter telling me, this is so stupid. And I said, well, here's the thing. You're living here rent free. I pay for everything. So this is your job. And it doesn't matter whether you think that it is stupid or not. I'm your boss.
Right.
And this is what I want done. And when you have a job and you get out and get a job, it doesn't matter if your boss tells you to stand on your head for 8 hours that you're there. You're going to say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and stand on your head because you're going to do what they say do. And this is what I'm telling you to do. So flashback about a month ago, my daughter sends me a picture of her pantry. Because my pantry is lined up like that. All the canned goods are stacked on top of each other.
On your disease.
Yes. She sent me a picture. She said, I am turning it on. She's like, I'm turning into my mother.
Poor child. That's what I think. Olivia and I were Olivia's my oldest daughter, if you don't know. She has started FaceTiming me every morning when she's getting ready for work. She goes to work about 10. So I'm like at work and I'm working and she's FaceTiming me. Anyway. Long story short, we talk sometimes about the past and how I was to her growing up. I was very strict. I was very religious. I was very conservative. Like, I was very perfectionistic. And she come out the womb. My sister calls her a free range human. I mean, she is like her dad. She is a free range human. She's very liberal. She's very, free. Anyway, completely my opposite. Very outspoken. She's not going to be, under anybody's thumb. And so we clashed so much when she was growing up. She was so headstrong. She hated living under my roof. She hated my rules. She hated everything I put her through. It was almost like living under me was trauma to her, because we were so unalike. And I was the authority. I was the dictator. I was going to run my house. Like you said, that's how I was raised. You live under my roof, and as long as you're under my roof, it's my rules. And I was like that until they were grown, and even at 18, I was like, if you're going to live in my house, you're going to live by my rules. So they both, her and Hunter both decided to move out as soon as they turned 18 and could. But anyway, since then, our relationship has gotten better and we're able to talk about things like that. And she told me the other day, which made me feel so good, that she's like, I forgive you for everything, because I know that you were just dealing with the traumas of your past, and that you were just doing the best you could at the time, in raising me and whatever. She said, but I think between you breaking your generational curses, you have allowed me to go even further and break generational curses. She said, and I don't think my children are going to suffer the type of generational curses that we did coming up, because she and I have done the work on ourselves to be able to heal from these traumatic experiences and learn the lessons in life. I know that was a long way to go around about saying that, but it was just such a moment for me to be like, I would go through the pain it took me to break free from perfectionism and the upheaval it caused in my life. I mean, breaking free from something like this is not easy, and it caused upheaval in not only my life, but the lives of everyone around me, because breaking generational curses and lifetime traumas and healing from that, it's going to change everything about who you are. That was not easy, but I would go through it 1,000 times again just to hear my child say thank you. And now the next generation's not going to suffer like we suffered. We laugh about it and we joke about it. And people will say, my OCD's acting up, blah, 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 and those are legitimate, real mental health concerns and issues, but it's not really a joke, or it's not really funny anymore when it comes to the point to where you're hitting exhaustion, trying to save face with the world of people that don't give a shit about you in the first place. It's like we try so hard to gain the acceptance of who, and when you're young, it's really important to gain the acceptance of the adults around you, but now we have to be that adult to that little child inside of us and take care of her and accept her and love her and be there for her in the ways that we weren't there, or that other people weren't there for us. And we're not blaming anybody. Like you said, our parents were just living out their childhoods, and their traumas and their habits and what they had learned. So we can't blame anybody for what they went through and how they parented, because let's face it, no child comes with a handbook. Every child, I have 3 children and they're all completely freaking different. I could not parent any one of them the exact same. It was different outcomes,
Yeah. Well, I've made that comment to my kids before. When special times and they'd be, or Mother's Day, oh, I hope I can be the mother you were. No, you're going to be better than I was, is what I would
Exactly.
tell them.
Yeah.
I said, because the things that I learned that I didn't like, the way my mother did things, I tried to change some of that, but I'm sure I still made mistakes of the way you didn't like something that I did. And they'll change that. That will make you a better parent than me. So,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. That brings me to another good point that Olivia made in that same conversation. She was like, when you're a child and you look at your parent, you think they're a superhero. You think that they can do no wrong, like they are the end all be all. She's like, but when I was grown, when I, now she's, almost 25, she's like, I realized that you're just a person too, and I don't look at you as mom. Yes, you're my mom, but I look at you as a person. And I think that's a big perspective that we take
Mm-hmm.
from being mothers of children into mothers of adults, and then them
Yeah.
looking back, and we're all just really just people.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't know how my kids felt in that. I do know it was important for me because my middle child was the one that we butt heads a lot. And she would go off and I didn't know why. And she'd usually call me and be like, I'm sorry for this morning or whatever. But if she didn't, 90% of the time I would, because I couldn't stand that. I can't stand
tension.
knowing that there's tension, like even if Carrie's playing with me and he says, oh, well, I'm upset or I'm mad. I'm like, listen, you need to stop. Like, you can't play with me anymore if I feel that there's tension there. Everything has to be okay. Everything has to be okay in my world. I can't stand that. When somebody's upset with me, I don't do good. And it would be the same way with my child. So if I lost my temper with her, I would tell her because it was important for me for them to understand that I made mistakes too.
Yeah.
And if I expect for you to apologize for your mistakes, then you have to understand that I got to apologize for mine.
Right.
Just because I'm the parent, I never agreed with that. There was only occasions that I would say, well, you're going to do it because I'm the parent and I said so. I always
Right.
hated that. Did I
Me
use it
too.
maybe once or twice? Maybe. But I would tell her, I apologize for the way I handled it. I'm not apologizing that you got in trouble. I'm not apologizing because you did wrong and I shouldn't have punished you. I'm apologizing because I lost my temper and that's not the way I should have handled it. I'm apologizing because I yelled at you or whatever the case was, because I would feel bad about that. I would think, okay, that's not the way I should have taken 5 and then came at them. And that would always upset me. But I wanted them to understand that I'm not perfect.
Right.
And that if I apologize for what I do, then that's showing accountability, which is teaching them to be accountable for what they do wrong.
Right.
And I had a teacher one time. Well, actually, he was the coach. And the softball coach had done something. We were having a meeting with him, and he was like the director. And I said something about what the woman did and that she should have apologized. And he was like, oh, no. An adult or teacher should never apologize to a child. I said, excuse me? No, sir. And I went into that. I was like, and if I can apologize to my child for what I did wrong, then she can apologize because she was wrong. She had,
Yeah.
long story, but we were trying to get her fired. I know that's terrible, but she had done lots of things wrong.
Yeah.
And if you point blank do something to a child that is wrong, then yes.
Yeah. And I think it's hard for perfectionists to apologize because then we're admitting weakness or we're admitting fault, or so I think that is a good exercise in humility and coming through perfectionism. And that's what we're going to talk about next week in part 2. There's way too much information to cover, in this week on the traits of perfectionism. We didn't even get into the root causes, and now we're out of time. And so next week, I think we'll pick back up with we'll just touch on the little bit of root causes because it kind of recaps, the traits of a perfectionist. And then we'll get into how do you start healing from perfectionism. So if you saw yourself today in any of the things that we shared, any of the traits, if you find yourself, catching yourself doing some of these things over the week, then stay tuned for part 2 in our episode next week on healing perfectionism, or trying to progress. We'll say progress over perfectionism, because we're always continuously getting better. We never will arrive, and that's just the human life. But until next time, just remember, progress isn't perfect,
but you are. So keep growing.
Bye, guys.